General Hospital spoilers tease that Dante Falconeri is on the brink of delivering his own son, Gio Palmieri, into the jaws of justice, and all without knowing that Gio is the very child he sired with Brooke Lynn Quartermaine. What begins as a routine investigation into a mysterious spike of adulterated spirits quickly morphs into a heart-wrenching saga of secrets, betrayal, and a father's race against time to save not only his son's freedom, but his very soul. From the moment the first whispers reached Dante Falconeri's precinct, he sensed something amiss. A string of late-night calls reporting underage drinkers collapsing after a single glass had teased Dante's instincts. He knew his own son, Rocco, had attended that ill-fated party on Willow's sprawling estate. He trusted the chaperones, believed the reputations of his friends. But the young boy who'd stumbled into the ER, pale and trembling, was unmistakably his. The token sip that felled Rocco wasn't an accident. It was a calculated strike. And when Rocco's breath hit the breathalyzer, the result was legally irrelevant. He was unconscious, and the only way to save him was to trace the poisoning back to its source. Dante paced his office, the weight of badge and bloodline entwined in his heart. As a seasoned detective, he understood evidence, motive, method. But as a father, logic blurred into dread. He stared down at his reflection in the darkened windowpane, seeing not the handsome, confident inspector of Port Charles Major Crimes Unit, but a petrified dad who'd nearly lost his boy. He had questions, many questions, and only one place to start: the orphan bottle that had claimed Rocco's strength with a single sip. Meanwhile, Gio Palmieri, quiet, introspective Gio, found himself shackled to a metal chair under the stark glare of fluorescent lights. He'd been picked up at the very same party, accused of distributing the tainted liquor that knocked his half-brother senseless. Arrested on suspicion of contributing to the endangerment of a minor, Gio faced the unthinkable: hours in a cell, criminal charges that could haunt him for life. He maintained his innocence, but in the cold, echoing corridors of the station, it hardly mattered. The system moved inexorably forward once a report was filed. Their world, once bound by silent tension, now splintered into parallel lines. Dante, determined to uncover the truth behind his son's near-fatal collapse. Gio, bewildered and betrayed by a justice system that treated him as guilty until proven otherwise. Each step Dante took through his investigation, collecting samples of the suspicious spirit, interviewing guests who'd gulped it down without consequence, each turn of the screw amplified his fear. If Rocco's single glass contained an unknown cocktail of chemicals, someone had meant to harm a minor. That someone must be held accountable. But the deeper Dante delved, the more he sensed a hidden hand guiding him toward a truth he wasn't yet ready to face. In the interrogation room, Gio fought to keep his composure. The cold metal of the table pressed into his palms as Detective Falconeri, the very lawman who embodied paternal authority, towered above him, voice clipped and official. "We found traces of antifreeze and benzodiazepines in the sample we pulled from that bottle," Dante declared, eyes narrowed with steely resolve. "You've got two choices, son. You tell me who mixed this, or I'm charging you with attempted murder." The words landed like a sledgehammer, and Joe's heart thundered. He opened his mouth, but no lie could escape his lips. He had no accomplices, no hidden stash, only the bewildering knowledge that he, of all people, was at the mercy of a man he barely knew. Unbeknownst to Dante, Lois Cerullo paced the corridors outside, an electric tension radiating from her every pore. As a longtime confidant of Brooke Lynn, Lois had harbored the secret of Joe's parentage ever since the day the child was born. Conceived in a whirlwind romance that ended in heartbreak, Brooke Lynn had hidden her pregnancy from Dante, allowing Gio to be adopted by another family to shield him from the chaos of their lives. Lois had been the guardian of that secret, sworn to protect Brooke Lynn's reputation and current relationships. But lurking behind her loyalty was a fierce devotion to Gio, and the rising panic that her silence might cost Gio everything. A shrill whistle from inside the station pierced Lois's reverie. Rocco's emergency had already alerted Chief of Police Jerry Jacks to the severity of the situation. The precinct was running on high alert. Yet even as she navigated the maze of sterile hallways, Lois's thoughts raced back to Brooke Lynn's tear-streaked confession 2 years prior, when she'd handed over Gio with trembling hands and begged for forgiveness that never came. What began as an act of protection had morphed into an unbreakable chain of lies that would now entangle an innocent boy in a criminal case. Dante's questions grew more insistent as the night wore on. He grilled Gio on every possible scenario. Did he spike the punch? Did someone coerce him? Was he under duress? But each denial felt like a brick wall. Rocco's fragile condition, stabilized in the hospital but still perilously close to critical, gnawed at Dante's conscience. If the poison in the bottle was potent enough to render Rocco unconscious, it could have killed him. And if Gio had been at the helm, Dante swore on his life he would see his son behind bars. The badge was his pledge to protect the innocent, and his own flesh and blood might be the target. Gio could see the conflict roiling in Dante's eyes, the unwavering dedication to duty clashing with a primal paternal instinct. He swallowed hard, voice cracking as he insisted on his innocence. "Detective, I swear, I didn't touch the drink after I grabbed it. I was pranked, that's all I know." But Detective Falconeri's posture remained rigid, the handcuffs unsnapped but hanging ominously from the table. "Innocence doesn't absolve you from cooperating," Dante replied, tone devoid of warmth. "You either cooperate or you'll face the worst consequences." Outside, Lois clasped her hands, heart pounding with the knowledge that every second brought Gio closer to a ruin he didn't deserve. Her own memories flooded back, Brooke Lynn's impossible choice between motherhood and the public humiliation that would follow had haunted her friend for months. Yet immobilizing Brooke Lynn in her silence had always felt like the wrong path. Now, with Dante prepared to ruin Joe's life, and perhaps end Rocco's, Lois realized that revealing the truth was no longer a choice, but an obligation. Like a freight train of destiny, her footsteps thundered against the linoleum floor as she flung open the interrogation room door. Dante looked up in surprise, badge gleaming, protective arms blocking any outsider. "Lois, you can't," he started, but his words choked off against the line of fury in her eyes. Without hesitation, she strode forward and dropped the bombshell. "Dante, Gio is your son." Time fractured. The fluorescent lights buzzed as Dante's jaw slackened. Joe's eyes widened in a mix of shock and confusion. "What are you talking about?" Dante rasped, struggling to piece together the words. "Your baby with Brooke Lynn, adopted out. They named him Gio Palmieri." Silence fell, thick enough to choke on. Gio felt the ground shift beneath him, as though every childhood memory rewrote itself in an instant. Dante stared at Lois, betrayal and disbelief warring on his face. "You kept this from me, for what? Years?" The words trembled with grief. Brooke Lynn lied to me." Lois met his gaze evenly. "I protected you. I protected Brooke Lynn. You both had your lives, your careers. We thought we were doing the right thing." She turned to Gio, voice softening. "And we protected you, Gio. But now," her eyes glistened. "Now you're in danger, and I can't." "Amazing," Dante cut in, voice quaking. "You'd rather shield your precious reputations than protect your son?" Anger scorched through him. He could have died. "You knew that. And you said nothing." Joe's chest tightened. The officers in the room edged back, afraid to intervene in this familial explosion. His world had tumbled into ruins around him, and Guthrie's voice echoed an accusation he never imagined hearing from his own father. "You nearly killed Rocco, my brother, Gio," Dante continued, anguish softening into despair. "I would have put you behind bars if you'd done this on purpose." He sank into his chair, the weight of his badge offering no comfort. "But you're my son." The admission arrived as a whisper, raw and trembling. Dante looked at Gio as though seeing him for the first time. Gio mirrored the sentiment, tears brimming. I don't even know how to feel. In the moments that followed, Port Charles Major Crimes Unit transformed from a hive of professional detachment into a crucible of shattered trust and familial reckoning. Dante's radio crackled incessantly, but he ignored it, anchored by a revelation that eclipsed any routine case. He rose, unshackling Joe's wrist and standing between his two worlds, the policeman sworn to uphold justice and the father desperate to protect the son he'd never known. Brooklyn Quartermain burst through the precinct doors moments later, breathless and terrified. She'd received Lois's panicked call and rushed from the hospital where Rocco still hovered between life and death. Seeing Dante standing protectively beside Gio, her own heart shattered. "Dante," she sobbed, collapsing into his arms. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." The raw pain in her voice carried years of regret and longing. Dante held her at arm's length, his gaze shifting to Gio. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded. "Why hide our son?" Brooke Lynn's trembling answer came in a sob. "I was afraid. I thought I was sparing you, from scandal, from doubt. I convinced myself it was what Gio needed." She squeezed Joe's hand. "I loved you both. But I see now I just made things worse." Behind them, Lois watched, guilt and relief warring in her chest. The temperature in the room soared with the friction of their confessions. Rocco's health remained a ticking clock in Dante's mind. The unanswered questions about the spiked drink still lingered. Who had tampered with that bottle? Was it a random act of cruelty or a targeted attack on the Quartermain Falconeri dynasty? Dante's detective instincts reasserted themselves even as fatherly compassion welled within. He turned to Gio. "We need to figure out who's responsible for Rocco's poisoning." His voice, though gentle, carried the authority of a leader. Dialogue between father and son flickered with new possibility. The bond of blood might have been hidden, but the tenets of trust and cooperation could still be forged. Gio nodded, tears staining his cheeks. "I'll help," he whispered. "I swear, I want to help you protect Rocco." As they plotted their next steps, Dante felt the weight of his badge and the resilience of his heart align. He would channel his grief and betrayal into a relentless pursuit of truth. Together, they would gather every scrap of evidence, interview every attendee, and leave no stone unturned until the person who sought to harm Rocco and potentially destroyed Joe's life was exposed. Yet beneath that shared mission simmered the still raw ache of fractured relationships. Dante wrestled with the outrageous irony. His own silence, his devotion to duty, had nearly destroyed his family. He asked himself how many cases he'd closed, how many victims he'd comforted, while blind to the vulnerability at home. Brooke Lynn, too, confronted her mistakes, moments of self-preservation that had eclipsed her maternal instinct. Now, in the glare of shared pain, their love for Gio was the single beacon guiding them back to one another. Gio, once the passive victim of circumstance, began to feel something stir inside him, an unfamiliar ember of purpose and belonging. As he and Dante retraced the steps of that fateful night, each clue they uncovered not only edged them closer to the culprit, but wove a fragile thread of kinship. They combed through security footage, analyzed the bottle's fingerprints, and cross-checked alibis, every interaction deepening the bond between father and son. Though words of affection were still stilted, actions spoke volumes. When Dante caught Joe's trembling hand adjusting handcuffs, he didn't chastise him, he squeezed it in solidarity. Outside the precinct, Brooke Lynn and Lois maintained a vigil at Rocco's bedside. Nurses whispered that the boy's system had begun to clear the toxins, but recovery remained tenuous. Brooke Lynn's tears fell unbidden as she replayed the moment she'd consented to give Gio up, sacrificing her right to see him grow, all to safeguard his future. The irony burned. In trying to shield one child from scandal, she'd exposed another to mortal peril. Lois held her friend, promising that no future secrets would bind them, that transparency, however painful, was the only path forward. Back in the interrogation room, now repurposed as a makeshift strategy hub, Dante presented his findings to Gio. The toxin mixture, antifreeze, and a fast-acting sedative was supplied through that cup. Whoever did this understood chemistry. His brows knitted in concentrated fury. And only someone who knew exactly who would be at that party could execute it so precisely. He paused, eyes narrowing. Which means this wasn't random. It was deliberately aimed at your bloodline. Gio swallowed, horror dawning. My bloodline? My family? His voice cracked. They wanted to hurt me, or my brother. Dante nodded. I think they targeted the Quartermain and Falconeri legacy. You, Rocco, Brooklyn. Someone with a grudge or a thirst for leverage. They developed a list of suspects, disgruntled relatives paranoid about Quartermain inheritance squabbles, ravenous tabloids seeking scandal, even rival crime families aiming to destabilize Dante's position in law enforcement. Every theory was a thornier puzzle. Yet the two men, united by adversity, hunted tirelessly. As dawn broke over Port Charles, they raced from Brooklyn's mansion to shady labs in the city's forgotten industrial zone. Each revelation, each narrow escape, bound them closer. Meanwhile, Lois unearthed a crucial break. Security footage from a local bistro showed a shadowy figure slipping a small vial into the wine bottle before it reached the party. The timestamp aligned perfectly with the poisoning. Brooklyn and Lois exchanged triumphant glances. It was the lead they needed. But when they traced the footage to the perpetrator's face, cold dread replaced triumph. It was someone from within the Quartermain circle, someone who blamed Brooklyn for her departure from the family fold. Someone who'd sworn to bring her down. That evening, as the Falconeri Palmieri clan reconvened in the hospital chapel, Gio on crutches, still recovering from emotional trauma, Rocco weak but smiling, Brooklyn striving to hold herself together, Dante called the suspect into custody. The hall reverberated with the echo of handcuffs clicking shut. In that moment, victory tasted bittersweet. The immediate danger had passed, but the scars of deceit remained. Dante looked at Gio, pride and sorrow intermingling in his gaze. You were right, he admitted quietly. Family is everything. Gio swallowed, tears glistening. I just wish I'd known. Wished you'd known. Earlier. Brooklyn enveloped both men in a trembling embrace, forgiveness and regret woven into her arms. Lois watched from the corner, tears of relief sliding down her cheeks. The web of lies had unraveled, but the family had endured. In the aftermath, Port Charles itself seemed to exhale. The case closed, headlines shifted away from scandal, and life, fragile and unpredictable as always, crept forward. For Dante, the precinct no longer felt like a fortress against the world. It was a battleground where the hardest fight was fought at home. Brooklyn returned to her music career, buoyed by renewed purpose and the promise of being the mother Gio needed. Gio, heart-hardened by betrayal yet softened by love, began to build tentative bridges with his parents, though he made it clear that trust must be earned one day at a time. And as Rocco regained his laughter and mischief, Dante often found himself watching his boys from the doorway, one by blood, one newly discovered, and realizing that fatherhood was a landscape of endless surprises. The night when everything seemed poised to collapse had become the crucible that forged an unbreakable bond. Secrets had nearly destroyed them, but in the end, truth and the courage to share it saved them all. So when General Hospital spoilers whispered that Dante Falconeri is days away from sentencing his own son, remember this. Sometimes the gravest threats come not from the outside, but from the shadows we cast ourselves. And in Port Charles, where every secret can be lethal, love remains the fiercest weapon of all.